Welcome to the Small Giants Fishbowl. This topic is mission-driven hiring. We're switching tracks to talk about the processes and philosophies that go into hiring employees that pursue their work with the passion that values-driven companies require. Sherry Erdman, Vice President of Global Human Resources at Real Precision, leads this fishbowl, sharing the tangible results from their systematic approach to finding the right people. Okay, here we go.
Chris, do me a favor, introduce yourself, 30 seconds.
Cool. My name is Chris Manley. I'm with a company called Ingenious. We're based in Greenville, South Carolina, and we focus on web marketing for small to mid-sized companies, mostly in our area.
Great. Thanks, Chris. Irene.
Yes, my name is Irene Ibera, and I'm with Blue Plate Catering in Chicago, and we are Chicago's leading catering company.
Fantastic. Thank you, Irene. Aaron.
I too am from Chicago, and I have a couple people with me that do our hiring. I own a precision painting and decorating outside of Chicago, and we are a painting contracting company.
Great. Thank you, Aaron. Jean.
My name is Jean Moncrief. I'm with Emerge Studio, and we're two partners who work with entrepreneurs around the world, helping them grow their businesses and get a bit of sort of operational traction going as well. So that's me.
And half the time you're in Romania, half the time you're in South Africa, and the other half the time you're all over the world, right?
And we're in North America, yeah.
Great. Rob.
Hi, Rob Dubay, Image One. We manage print environments for mid to large size companies, printers, multifunction printers, copiers, and document management.
Great. Thanks, Rob. I appreciate it. Sherry, if you'd like to go ahead and introduce yourself and go ahead and take over the program.
All right. I'm Sherry Erdman. I work at Real Precision here in the St. Paul, Minnesota area in Vadnais Heights. Real Precision is a motion controls solutions provider. We do a lot of electrical, mechanical devices for motion control. And we have about 110 employees here in the U.S., here in St. Paul, and then we have a facility in the Netherlands as well. A little bit of contract manufacturing in China, and I lead the global human resources efforts here. So, all right, I've been here about 11 years. Just to get into mission-driven hiring, I love hiring, love recruiting, but I think one of the reasons I love hiring so much is because I believe in the values in the company, and I feel like part of my job is selling the company, right? So I always compete with the sales department and tell them I'm just as much of a salesperson as they are. So, but I love the mission-driven aspect of our hiring process. Can't say I'd love hiring so much if I wasn't working for. It depends on the company, right, and what they support. But I am not an expert at hiring by any means. I make mistakes in hiring, and every hiring situation is unique. So depending on the position you're going after. But one of the things when I came in, kind of leading this effort, was trying to focus on, what was important to us, our culture and our identity, and making sure that we did not want to lose that and risk that. And so here, when we hire for positions, we communicate very openly that, what you do and your skill sets and so forth is just as important as the fit. And we talk about fit a lot. And I let them know that right up front. So I'm going to go through kind of our hiring process, what we look at. If you have questions, let me know. How much time do I have, Glenn?
We have till 2 o'clock.
Okay. All right. So, all right.
Excuse me, we've got an hour total. That could be
hour total.
So.
Okay. So let me know if I need to speed up or if because I could probably talk about this a long time. But first of all, in terms of the pre-work for the hiring process, what's required here at Real is you have to have, the hiring manager has to have a job description finalized. They have to submit a hiring requisition with all the proper sign-offs, and which includes, who's going to be on the hiring team. We require a cross-functional hiring team because we want input from across the organization, not just one department or a few people. We require that we have a training plan in place before we will post for a position. That was always an issue of, okay, now we got a person we want to hire, and getting the hiring manager to actually help create a training plan for successful onboarding was always an issue. So now we're requiring it up front. We're not posting until we have it, because part of a successful recruit is also making sure that they're trained properly and they feel good about the company coming in. And that's a key piece. And then market compensation data. So that's all, making sure we have everything before we move forward with the hire. All right, when we're looking at additional pre-work, one other thing that we work on is our evaluation tools. So we have a standard evaluation tool that we modify and make it unique for each position, but it hits on skills, it hits on the mission aspect of it, it has specific questions that tie to it of, does this person align with our culture? So we'll go back to some of our core principles that we adhere to here in terms of servant leadership and teamwork. And we talk about seeking inspirational wisdom, and we could get into that discussion, but of how we assess that. But we make the evaluation tool unique to the position. Everybody who's on the hiring team has to assess and fill out the evaluation tool, which has a rating system tied to it and so forth. And at the bottom of it, it asks key questions like, when you've met with this person, are they an energy giver or are they an energy taker? So do they deplete you when you walk out of the interview, or do you feel more motivated and inspired and like, so that's a key piece of, I think, a good question to ask. So anyway, those are some of the key aspects of the evaluation tool. We also assess learning curve. Hard to do, but we try to ask questions and understand, how if they're missing some key skills, how fast do we feel that they're going to get up to speed? That's another question. And we also determine up front, what are the testing requirements for each position. A lot of times we do a written communications test. We send people to Microsoft Office testing, presentation. If they're in a higher VP, executive level position, sales position, having them get up in front of the hiring team and present on whatever skill set they're bringing to the table. Let's see here. So that's kind of some of the pre-work, just deciding some of those things up front. When we get into the actual interview process, so typically, every position's different, like I said, especially high-level positions. We take a lot more time and diligence, but it starts with a phone interview, goes to a live interview with myself and the hiring manager, then a live interview with the hiring team. We do internal assessments where they can come in. Where they can meet with the department team. So we'll do the entire hiring team, potential to connect with the actual department. So, because you want a good feel within the department, it might be a lunch where they can do a meet and greet. It's not actual intensive interview, but more of a meet and greet where the department can interact with the person that you're looking at. And then there's additional interviews as needed. But some of the things we do that are unique is we've done this many times, is towards the end, if you're struggling, you just don't know for sure, there's just some question mark in your head, is this the right person? We always do this at the executive level, but we'll invite the person over to they've done this before, they've come to my home, I serve them dinner, we'll have myself and our CEO, who's the hiring manager in that case for an executive level position. We might have a board member, we might have another person on the executive team join for an informal dinner. There's been times we've went to a restaurant, but the whole piece is trying to get to know the person for who they are and get the interview face off. I work on that right away, from the phone interview right away, to try and remove the interview face, make them feel comfortable, and be that authenticity and just being real. You want to see professionalism. You want to see that they're prepared and so forth. You want to see that for sure, but then you want to see them step away from that and be real with you. So, all right. So in terms of the phone interview, again, I've talked about a little bit, the genuine authenticity, trying to get them to be real from you right away. And I always let them know the process. I let them know the length of the process and what's important to us. I let them know the fit piece as well as the skill piece, and that both are just as important. And I always ask questions right away, like, why are you interested in Rael? I want to know if they've done any research. Have they went out to our website? Have they looked at our core values and some of the history of why Rael was started and what's important to the company, and kind of the how of what's important to Rael is how we do our business, how we treat our employees, how we build relationships, and what commitment means, integrity, and so forth. And see if they've even done any research at all. A lot of people, if they've done the research, they're going to comment on it. And then I find out, as we're talking about it, are they excited by it, or are they not, or is it just, you can tell if they're energized by it or not. And then differentiating ourselves right away. And that's part of the whole thing that's the sales piece that I like. So I love differentiating us from other companies and telling people why they want to work for Rael. What do we do differently that a lot of companies out in the world maybe don't do? And I explain the how of our business. I give examples of maybe hard decisions the company has been faced with, and how we have turned away business because we felt it was infringing on an ethical value, and saying, we could have went after the profit. We could have gained a lot of revenue if we would have said yes to this, but we intentionally said no because we felt it infringed on one of our core values, and see what they think about that. I talk about community involvement right up front. We do a huge trip to the Dominican Republic every year with our coworkers, and that's a great one to talk about, because they either are super inspired by it and are just like, man, I want to be part of that, and see where they're at. So anyway, I'm looking for energy. I'm looking for passion around, and then I ask questions, in terms of their own giving. Have they ever done, been involved in, serving outside of work and so forth. So let's see here. That's just, that is pretty much done in the phone interview. Then we get into the fit. So talking about fit to culture. So I specifically, talk about compensation. So, and this gets really hard in today's day. I'm sure everybody is feeling all this pressure with not being able to bring in people fast enough. And there's just no applicants out there. And the people that are out there are not the people that you want, and they don't fit the position. And I'm feeling it as well. So, but we talk about compensation up front. If compensation is their only motivation, if that's the only drive they have, if all they care about is ladder climbing, and there's a lot of young people out there like that too, and they're just entering their careers, that's, they're just going to go make lots of money and they're going to climb the ladder. And just, if that is what their motivation is, it's probably not going to be a good fit. And we talk about that. Because we know that we're not going to retain them as the highest bidder. They're not going to last very long. And I don't want to always be playing that game of constant conversations around their compensation and not, because they're never going to be happy. So, and then do you have, when we talk about fit to the culture, are they energized by what they hear about the company? Do you have the right person on the hiring team that can assess it? So look at your hiring team. Do you have people on that hiring team that have high EQ and can assess the candidate well in that regard. Or if you're hiring an engineer, or the only people that are hiring that engineers, and because they're going to be going after skill, and they're going to be technical in nature. All their questions are going to be geared likely towards very technical questions, and they're going to either be a thumbs up, this guy is an awesome engineer, but yeah, what about all of those other key aspects? And I know here that's not true for necessarily all of our engineers, but a lot of them would maybe not care as much. They're going after the engineer. So fit, in terms of, so we talked a little bit about the fit to culture, fit on the department team. We a lot of times, bring them in to meet the department team. They'll have that informal lunch I talked about, but you want that team buy-in. Also, it's amazing on an informal lunch just with the department. What red flags did the, meeting with the team afterwards, do they see any red flags? Is there excitement or energy from the team? And just listening to what they have to say. Are they excited about working with the person? And then fit with the hiring team. So we have a lot of roundtable discussions with the hiring team. Everybody gets to speak. Everybody has to speak. They have to all fill out the evaluation tool. We ask good questions. Who gave the person the company tour? What did they notice on the tour about the candidate? Did they engage in the product? Did they ask good questions? What stood out? What did their body language say? Were they always one step ahead of you? Were they, in terms of their, did they drag behind when they walk? Just the way they present themselves, the way they walk with you, the way they talk tells you things. So, and then we go through the candidate assessment, and then we go around the table. Thumbs up, thumbs down. Would you hire this candidate? And then open book hiring. That's another key aspect of the hiring process. I don't want any surprises. And I say no surprises. Well, no surprises in terms of what I know about the position, what I know about this person coming into the department. I am very transparent. I do not hold back any information. What are the challenges that I know of? But I think that's really good because they know what the low-hanging fruit is they're going to be able to go after and get excited about. Okay, I can do that. I can change that. And I don't want surprises when they walk in the organization to say, wish I would have known that in the hiring process. And so I try to be as transparent as I know how to be in terms of what my own knowledge is, but there's always some surprises because I don't know everything that happens in the company. So, but we think that will increase their longevity, and they also extremely appreciate the honesty. I mean, when they know if you're being transparent with them, and then they feel, when you talk about the company in terms of, REAL stands for honest, trustworthy, and so forth. So I need to represent what the company is and what our values are. So, anyway, my intention is to never hold back information. So we also, for some positions, like for hiring a CFO, we're gonna sign a confidentiality or non-disclosure agreement. So we will share some of the company's financials with them, go through the annual operating plan potentially, company goals, how we've done in terms of achieving the goals. So it all depends on the position you're hiring. But at a higher level, we would share that kind of information. And then testing. So, again, we touched on a little bit of what those tests would look like. So the written communication. So on average, managers spend 80% of their time communicating. So it's pretty vital. So I'm sure everybody has hired people that have either had poor written or poor verbal communications. And so we usually give a written test applicable to the position being hired. So we'll give a scenario for hiring a salesperson or a customer service person. We'll give a written scenario. Company ABC has this issue and you need to respond to this customer. Are they professional in their written communication? How are they going to represent the company? Can they write? And we give them a computer. So, everything goes out through a computer, right? So, they can spell check it and do all those tests, but we want to make sure they're going to represent the company well. And then the presentation piece. One of the things I look for in the presentations that they would give is obviously the ability to effectively present the material, and then you're just looking at, are they going to gain credibility quickly, or is it going to have to be earned over time? How fast are they going to gain credibility in the organization, especially at a higher level? A sales position, I mean, it's very, are they going to be able to capture the audience? Yeah, so part of it is confidence. Do they have confidence in themselves? So you'll see that in the presentation. We also do some profile fit exams. We send people off to an external agency to go through a profile analysis. It's like a half day where they actually meet with a psychologist. I'm sure some of you have done some of those types of things. Those are primarily for the executive level positions. And then we also, the fourth test that we do is Microsoft Office. And then when in doubt, don't hire. So there's obviously high cost in a bad hire. And this is not, I know that there's so many times where I have some question marks in my head, and I can't say that I have always said, no, we're not hiring because I have this small question mark. But there is high cost in a bad hire. It's detrimental to the culture, the team, and obviously the cost to the company. Yeah.
Sherry, you mentioned a little bit ago, you mentioned that you go around the room and everybody has to give a thumbs up or thumbs down or a hire. Is that something where it has to be universal? Everybody in the room has to give a thumbs up? And if it's not universal at first, do you have a process for discovering why somebody has an issue with somebody? And do they get another opportunity, or is it, if it's 6-3 around the room and 3 people have a question, they're like, nope, this isn't the right one for us? Or do you guys take time to discover what might be the issue and whether that's actually an issue in hiring that person?
Yeah. Well, we're very open. So you know exactly when we're sitting around the table, if somebody is a thumbs down, why they're a thumbs down. But for the most part, it's amazing how you come to the round table. We have everybody fill out the evaluation form right after they're done with the interview, because we want individual assessments. So we know when you walked out of that interview, this is how you felt. And then when we come together in the round table, which is, a day, a week later, whatever it is, it's amazing how, as everybody talks openly, how things come together. Oh, okay, things start to make sense. Maybe some of those big question marks you had or fears by what other people saw, felt, heard, whatever, people's feelings change. So the roundtable piece is very good, but I also think the individual instrument is really good too. So because you can ask different questions. Anyway, so great question. We try to have consensus, but we also talk about right up front when we meet as a roundtable, we say, let's understand that the person that owns this hiring decision is the hiring manager, and the hiring manager is in the room, and ultimately they make the decision. So whether to hire or not hire. So we want consensus if at all possible, and that's why we're here. And we want to ensure that we have a quality hire. So if there is 1 or 2 people that would say, if we had more than 1 or 2 people with a thumbs down, we would never move forward. And usually our hiring teams are approximately 8 people or so. And then part of it is, who's got the thumbs down. So we do cross-functional interviews. So if it's people within the department that are going to have to work with this individual a lot, we're going to listen to it a little bit harder. And versus somebody who may not interact with them much in the day-to-day operations. But so we try to drill in further. They have the opportunity to, if we want to move forward with the hire, we still want to move down the path, we will offer them to have another round of an interview with the person, whether it be over the phone or bringing the person back in. And that's always an option, and we would move down that path. But in the end, the hiring manager after that, if the person still is thumbs down, we would leave it in the hiring manager's. They get to decide. Obviously, I'm the final sign off as well as our CEO, but that would be our overall process. Any other questions? Good. Yeah.
Does the CEO sign off on every hire?
Yes.
Does the CEO meet with every hire?
No. Not every hire, no. And it mostly just at the executive level. Sometimes the step below the executive level, but that's it.
What's the so let me say, make sure I got my question right. So, but he does sign off on every hire.
Correct. When I have the offer letter in hand, he does not sign the offer letter. I do, as well as the hiring manager. So it's our two signatures on the offer letter. But before I move forward with the offer letter, he gives me the approval to.
What's the process for that?
So once we have our evaluations. So he has the option to review every evaluation, phone interview notes. He can meet with myself and the hiring manager. Not always is a situation. Obviously, if we're hiring an assembler on the floor, we're not going to spend a ton of time meeting with him and taking up his time there's a lot of trust given. But if I'm saying there's a culture fit, and I want to move forward. If I'm moving forward, I'm knowing that there's fit there. So, but he has the ability to see all that information, and he's getting the final offer letter and saying, here's where we're at with compensation, and this is why we want to bring this individual in, and it's either a go or a no go, or he asks more questions. And he has already signed off on the rec, so he's already approved the hire. Right. So now he's just approving who we're hiring. And again, he's got the information, and we've met, I have weekly meetings with him. So I'm filling him in on where we're at with every hire and the candidates that we have and so forth. So he's being plugged in the whole time.
What's the typical time frame from start to finish?
Well, it's increased over the last 6 months because of the market. Our unemployment rate in Minnesota is at about 3.5% or less right now. So we are feeling the effects of that. Typically, I would say 60 days from start to finish, launch of a rec to hire. Now, it's probably more, I'm hoping to hire in 90 days. If we're doing an executive level position, those are a little bit more in depth.
Mm-hmm.
What about for people? So if you need to increase capacity in production in your warehouse or whatever, your facility, I can't imagine you're spending 60 days to put somebody on the line. Us as a painting company, we have a ton of frontline employees, and we have only a handful of people in the office that oversee them. So one of our challenges right now is we'll probably add 30 employees in the next 30 days and to get ready for summer here. So when you're looking at that, number one, I'm curious about your pool. So how many people you're drawing from, especially in those front lines. Mm-hmm. And then what do you say about the turnaround? All of this stuff about perfect fit and dinners is great on an executive hire. But when you're talking about hiring somebody for $15 an hour to apply.
Yeah, we don't do that.
Machine. Yeah, mm-hmm. So maybe speak to that.
Sure, absolutely. So yeah, obviously the process is not as intensive. So for our production people, first of all, we have we maintain about a 30% temp ratio for temporary workers on our production line, and because we have quite a bit of volatility in our business, so we always have temporary workers here. And so we bring in temporary workers that we try to, at best. It's not easy with the temporary, but we have time to work with them. We have some long-term temporary workers that stay with us. And so our goal is to be able to hire from our temporary staff and understand, obviously, their skill set. They've been working on our production floor. They're waiting for the next assembly position to open up. And then they're understanding more about the company as they're in the walls here. They're understanding, how we function, how we go about our business. So the interview is, for our assembly, we have one interview process, and it's a collaborative team effort for the interview, but we gear it a lot towards the culture, and they've already been in the building for, it could be anywhere from 2 to 6 months that they've been working at Real. So they have some experiences here. So we gear it towards their experiences, the culture, what they like about the company, and then we talk a lot about their growth and development and so forth. So I don't know if that helps you. If you have temporary workers you're hiring 30 people in 30 days, that's a lot. And yeah.
Well, I was going to say, Aaron, tell us, what's your process right now for bringing on the people so fast? I mean,
well, I'm sure
bringing them in.
Like Blue Plate and Tasty, they have to deal with a very similar thing because there's huge spikes in their business in the summer months also. But we just try to get at it early. So we will add. So we've been interviewing and basically giving people first week in April start date. But we don't. It's not like we start and in 30 days we have to get it all accomplished. So we probably have 10 or 15 that we've already made commitments to that will start, and then they'll go through a week onboarding and training process, three days to a week, depending on who it is, what level that they are, and then we'll go from there, and then we'll go from there and then continue to hire. So that'll be first class, and then we'll continue to hire, and then 15 days later do it again, and then we'll be pretty well set, and then we just add a couple people here and there.
Okay.
And we do it in a one interview, phone interview, and then one interview in person.
In person.
And they can submit. So we email them some stuff. They send back application, the rest, that sort of stuff. And our application's pretty detailed and lengthy, so we get a lot of information before we even give a phone interview. And then,
sure.
Yeah, so that's how we do it.
Okay. Yeah, we do the same thing. I mean, through the phone interview notes, we get a lot of detail. And we try to address up front, we'll meet with the hiring manager. What are your must-haves for the position? We call them the hot buttons that you need. We'll go after them right away in the phone interview and hit on them for sure. But our phone interviews, we try to minimum to keep them at 30 minutes. But
I want to pick on Aaron here a little bit. Because I know we've talked quite a bit, and you've been doing a lot of work in building values and culture inside of an industry that doesn't quite have it as cemented as some other places. You recently spoke on how you do that inside of your business. How have you been integrating that values component into your hiring process from previous when you weren't even really thinking about it a lot to now where you're speaking on it in your industry?
That's why we're here, Glenn. We're trying to learn. It's a work in progress. I mean, if I had it down, I would be teaching the class, not listening.
Well, that's why I'm asking. What is it that you figured out so far as you've gone through this process? Because
I think that one of the things that we find is that really it's more of an explanation of what we do. I think that people, what we're finding about hiring is that, especially in an industry that's lacking, is that people are really drawn to it. So some people go, well,
absolutely,
people are going to think it's weird, or do people not like it? Most people are like, man, I've been looking for something. And I wish I would have found you guys sooner. And then we have really loyal employees. And so when they start to get into the field, they're like, man, this is a really great place to work. And so that's really is just introducing it to them. We have some videos on our website and stuff that you've seen, Glenn, that kind of point people and get them excited and let them know what we're about. And I think that that's the biggest difference, is that we're able to usually hire, a lot of people want to work for us. So that's been the biggest differentiator for us in trying to find guys, because there's not a lot of workers out there. And this is a really tough environment, especially with being a big company and having to follow labor laws. And actually, we W-2 everyone, we don't 1099, so we run verify on employees, which, in Chicago takes a lot of the workforce in the trades away. So
I think you absolutely have it right, Aaron. I mean, differentiating yourself is, it's amazing if I can get the person on the phone and I start talking about who we are, our culture, our what we stand for, how we go about our business. People want to work here. It's just fun to feel the engagement. Yep. And then there's times I get that flat feeling where I don't know if they think that I'm just trying to sell a bill of goods, or if they've been part of companies that maybe have the values on the wall, but they don't live it. I certainly hear that a lot. Wow, you guys really live it. And it's like, absolutely we do. And here's some examples of how we live it. And another thing that I have not talked about, I went through more the hiring process towards mission-driven hiring, but how you brand your company is huge. And I have been working on that. And if you can go to my LinkedIn page and see how I've tried to brand Real, but I'm selling Real I'm in HR, so I'm recruiting, but I think if you're working at your company, if you're in a position at a high executive level position where you're wanting people good talent, you want your LinkedIn page to represent the company well and talk about how we are different from other companies, including your website. We still have work to do on our website to continue to further differentiate ourselves. We do phenomenal things for our community. We don't have that out on our website right now, and so those are things we're going to be working on in the future. But branding your name in your company and getting it out there is huge right now. Glassdoor I don't have a lot of activity right now on Glassdoor. I've been a little bit hesitant, but I mean, there's a lot of different avenues out there in social media. That's just where the world is going. Do you love social media? Yes or no? Everybody's got a different opinion on it, but that is, the hires are coming in through LinkedIn, being able to, anyway, branding is huge.
What's Glassdoors?
Glassdoors is, do you have experience with it, John? Is it John?
Yeah, we're going through the team that I'm helping in Toronto is going from about 30 people. We've just brought in 20 people as well. And really quickly for a major project for one of the biggest operators of shopping malls in the US. And Glassdoor came up a couple of times through the process. We had 2 or 3 bad reports on Glassdoor, and it's part of a startup going through those changes and getting kind of in touch with what's going on in Glassdoor and kind of making sure you know what's going on there. So yeah, I had some experience with that.
And that's why I've been hesitant on Glassdoors, is because it's a site where people can post comments about your company. I work for Real, a phenomenal company, and here's what I experienced, but you can get also the negative comments. But what they say is it's good to have a well-rounded picture of a little bit of some bads and hopefully a whole lot of goods, but where people they'll go out to Glassdoors to see what people are saying about the company, and hopefully, they're going to see what I've been saying about the company. Hopefully they're going to see some of that on Glassdoor to prove that we're actually doing what we say we're doing. But
Sherry, have there been any elements of your hiring process that you eliminated, something that you previously did and you found that it wasn't working for bringing people in? I mean, you have a pretty well-defined process here, and I just wonder if there's something that you've taken out.
Yeah, well, there's certain things that we brought in, I would probably say, than taken out. The things that I think in the past we didn't have very clear expectations of the hiring team. they didn't know, are we making the decision, or how does this whole decision happen? So trying to clearly say the hiring manager owns the decision. Yes, we want consensus if at all possible, but there's times where you just can't get to consensus and we still have to make a decision. And that the owner of that decision is the hiring manager. So that was one issue. Another thing was we didn't have the EQ aspect. We were hiring for positional fit of skills and abilities, but we weren't focused on the EQ piece of it, and we weren't doing enough communication in terms of that whole differentiating yourself. I mean, you might briefly touch on the values, but to really go into it, and we had people here at Real that weren't, after some time they found out, they weren't aligned with our culture, and we had to have those after the fact discussions of, this is Real, this community giving, for example. That's one example. We've been in business since 1970. We've always given 10% of our pre-tax profits back to the community. If we're profitable, we end the year profitable, 10% goes back to the community. And so we had some misalignment with some people here about that. They said, you know what, I give of my own, on my own accord, up through my own personal life, through my church, my this, my that, whatever it may be. And the company shouldn't be giving, that money should be redistributed either to the coworkers or investing in some other way to grow the company, and there would be a misalignment. And we had to have discussions saying, this is Real, we are always going to give back to the community, and you need to decide whether you can support it or not, and whether you want to be here. So that's just one example. But
what's EQ?
EQ is the soft side. IQ goes towards your smarts and your ability to fulfill the roles. How good are you going to be at the skill set? And so IQ. EQ is how you go about your position. How good are you at interacting with people? There's ways to assess EQ, but what does it stand for?
Emotional quotient.
Thank you.
Yeah. And IQ, intelligent quotient. So. Yep.
So I refer to it as the how we do things. How is this person going to interact with teams? How is their ability to get along with others? It's that piece that makes great teams at your company. It's the people that you want to work with. You want them on your team. Why do you want them on their team? Well, they might have that higher EQ. But I don't know if that helps.
Yeah, totally helps.
Okay.
Out of curiosity, what profiling tools are you guys using?
John, you're next.
Oh, I'm sorry, John. I didn't mean to get out of you.
In terms of evaluating the candidate?
Yeah.
Okay. We've created our own tool. So let's see here.
This is like a personality assessment?
Oh, no, we hire that out. So we'll go to an external consultancy agency in the Twin Cities here that will do those. But we don't do them for every hire. Those are primarily for executive level hires.
Okay, that's where they go off for the half day?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
So, Sherry, I was just going to ask, how granular is your process? Or, I mean, do you create a manual, and then how do you communicate it to everybody? I guess, Rob, kind of falling back to the EOS scenario, it's 2-3 pages and easily communicatable, but it sounds like as you grow, it gets more and more complex. How much detail do you got? Have you got this fat folder and then communicate it about a better way of doing it?
Like I said, every position is different. So, and it depends on, you might get somebody that's very difficult to assess. I mean, we had to hire a CFO a few years back, and he seemed like a good candidate. He was just really hard to read. It was really hard to get his interview face off and just be real with us. And he probably felt like he was being real, but you didn't necessarily feel energized by, walking away feeling like he gave you energy or depleted you. It was just kind of this flat feeling. And that's just one example, but we did the dinner. And so amazing things can happen at those dinners because you ask their spouse to come with them. And so that's the whole secret. So his spouse came with, and we actually cooked dinner in one of our homes, and his spouse was very high EQ. So she was very outgoing, very expressive and open, transparent. And so she was like, "Oh, John is so excited about this position." And we're like, "Really?" Because we can't tell. But we didn't say that. But anyway, but it was great we saw a different side of him. And I think she helped relax him. And it was a great evening. After we left the evening, we felt, okay, he's it. And we went forward with an offer after that. But so we've had difficult situations like that. Another time we went to actually a restaurant, had another person bring along his wife. We bring along our spouses too. So I have no idea why, but my husband, when they showed up at the restaurant, he had never met, of course, this candidate or their spouse, but he decides to give them a big hug, which I was just like, "Oh my gosh, what are you doing?" But it was actually the best thing ever because they were the applicant was not very nervous, but his spouse was very nervous. And I think she felt we were going to interview her or something. And even though I try to say, "No, this is just very informal. We just want to have dinner together. There's nothing behind this. We just want to know you." And the wife was very, very nervous. But when my husband gave her the hug, everything came down and we had a great evening. And anyway, we ended up hiring the guy. He told me, he said, "When your husband hugged my wife, that was it made everything open. She all her tension was released. She was good, and we had a great evening." And anyway, there's just interesting things. We have lots of funny stories like that. We've taken people. Our CEO once, he lives out on a farm, and he took them clay pigeon shooting. I think just trying to get to know the person for who they were, and where it's very difficult. And we want to make a good hire. Obviously, at the executive level, there is a lot of time, but the cost of the hire is crucial. So I don't even know what my question was. I just started rambling.
It was a good answer. Sherry, what job sites are you using to get the word out there about open positions?
Career Builder, Indeed, LinkedIn. We have a recruiter license through LinkedIn, so we do the whole, and we just started that this year. So I've been learning a lot about LinkedIn and how to target candidates and go through. I mean, you do it. Once you have Recruiter, you can see everybody's page, everybody's profile anywhere. And so we target in-mails and stuff. And so you go through a search criteria. And then I don't use Monster a lot. Obviously,
do you use recruiters as well?
Yes.
Okay. That's a combination.
LinkedIn is a really great platform because you can have internal recommendations through LinkedIn as well, which has benefited us people online. We're kind of a smaller agency, but it's come in handy.
Okay, good. Yeah.
Also, Zardis. I don't know if any of you guys heard of that.
Which one?
Zardis.
Zardis.
Yeah, that's the platform we use.
How do you spell that?
ZARTIS.
Cool.
DARTIS?
Z as in zebra. Sorry,
Z.
wrong with my audio. But yeah, it's Zardis.
Zardis. ZARTIS.
Yeah.
Okay. I have not heard of them. So,
Sherry, how many people are you hiring per year?
Last year, I think we hired close to 20 people, in the U.S. That was just the U.S. And, so we're growing fast. That's a lot for us. I think this year already our fiscal year started November 1st, and I think we're already at close to 15 hires.
And is the process the same across the Netherlands and the US? And
yes, trying to, but yes, we're in the last 2 years we're making the process the same. Hasn't been consistently, but in the last few years we've been working on that. So
We've got about 5 minutes left.
Oh, one of the questions you had asked, was about communicating, how do I have a thick manual type thing? What I typically do is, depending on the hire, as soon as we get the hiring rec and we have a hiring team in place, I communicate out to the entire hiring team of, you have been selected to interview for this position. And within that email of communication, I explain the hiring process, and I explain who owns the decision. And I explain that everybody is required to fill out the candidate assessment tool. And if, so, this is part of our process at Rail, and you got to follow the process. And so for the most part, at a high level, I give an explanation of how the interview will work, and that we'll be sending out phone interview notes. HR will be doing the initial round of the phone interview. We'll be sending out those notes, and
so you're almost being educated in your first interview process that you're involved in. So
exactly.
If I'm involved in an interview, that's kind of where I'm being trained and educated on the overall
For
process.
the most part, yes. And people are getting used to it now, because this has been our process. But there's always the chance that, the hiring manager is going to want somebody new on the hiring team that has never maybe been a part of the process before. So I always send out the same communication and encourage them to come talk to me if they have additional questions and so forth. But
any chance, and if this is too much to ask, I totally understand, or if it's confidential, but any chance we could get a copy of your candidate assessment form?
Sure, no problem.
The hiring group uses?
Yeah, yep.
I'll coordinate with Sherry to get that out to attendees.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Glenn.
Thanks, Sherry.
You're welcome. All right.
All right, we've got just a couple minutes left. Are there any final questions that anyone has? I'll give Chris a chance to talk since he hasn't spoken yet.
One of my questions was for the schedule of interviews that y'all have. How long do each of those tend to be? And especially once you get into some of the later ones, like the live interview with you and the hiring manager versus the live interview with the team versus the department interview, how many of those happen kind of back to back on the same day versus you have 5 separate days of interactions?
Yeah. We're trying to condense that because it's so hard. The competition out there is so hard. So we realize that, we don't want to lose anybody here because our hiring process is too long. So we have tried it. We condense quite a bit. So phone interview could be today, and say I have a great phone interview. Immediately I get the phone interview notes, the resume off to the hiring manager saying, assess right, great candidate, really feel good about this person. Let me know right away if you want to move forward. They hopefully get back to me the same day, if not by the next morning. And I am literally on the phone by no more than 24 hours later saying, we want to schedule an interview. So interview, and this is depending on how hard it is, the position. Right now, typically there would have been 2 interviews at Real at least, but it could be 1 interview at Real where they are coming in. If we're feeling really good about the person, they're going to meet with myself and the hiring manager, and they're going to get a tour. And the hiring manager is going to do the tour. And so they're probably with that hiring manager at least an hour and a half to 2 hours. And then we, at the same day, we could be bringing in the entire hiring team, the rest of the people that are on the team. And we try to do, if we have six additional people on the team, we'll probably do 3 one-hour interviews where we group them 2 people with the candidate in 45-minute to 1 hour increments. So they don't have a ton of time. If it's, the following, but anyway, point is we try to move as quickly as possible. We try to have the probably in-person interviews wrapped up within a week of that phone interview, if at all possible, trying to get them in as quickly as possible. And then we literally, the day after the interview, or a lot of times the same day, if they're able to turn in those assessment tools right away, we are meeting and doing a roundtable like ASAP. So it is fast, and it might not be ideal, but it's the world today, and right now anyway. And then going from there. So obviously, if you're going to start doing all the testing and so forth, that takes additional time. So depending on what you decide is needed for testing requirements, that's going to be additional time. But we move fast.
Cool.
Okay, well that's it for this one. Check out more Fishbowls exclusively for the Small Giants community at smallgiants.org.